Hi there, it's Liz Yuille from Old Stables Crafts. I'm a UK-based independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Thank you for joining me again today for another Top Tip Tuesday. And as you can see, I have nothing here, which is very unlike me. However, I have been asked to give a bit of an overview about sandwiches for die cutting. So I thought I would do that today. So I have with me a lot of bits of stuff, and I'm going to go through what the different sandwiches are from a Stampin' Up! Point of view using the Big Shot, which was the machine that we used to sell as a die cutting and embossing machine. So I'm not covering other die cutting machines. The only one that I can talk about is the Big Shot. There is a new die cutting and embossing machine due out. We don't know quite when yet, but we are told it is coming for Stampin' Up! To sell. So lots of plates. So the normal start for a Big Shot would be these two plates. Sometimes these are joined with a hinge and may have an additional shim as well. So you may find that some have got this piece and then two bits hinged on. But the basic setup is the Big Shot platform and the thin die adapter. So if you're using these and you want to just die cut ordinary thin dies, you would want two cutting plates. Mine is very well loved and very well used. What do I mean by ordinary dies? I mean things like this, so just thin dies. So that would be the normal sandwich for the Big Shot. So you would have your standard base plate, your Big Shot platform, your thin die adapter, because we're doing a thin die. Then you would have a cutting plate. Then you would have a piece of card. And it does have this here, so it does explain it. So you have your thin die adapter, your cutting plate, your piece of card, your die. Let me get one that's reasonably easy to get out, because some of these are looser than others. That one is very loose. So your die and then a cutting plate on top, and you want everything lined up. The only thing that you might want to do is, if you're cutting something with a very definite edge, a straight edge, if you can put it on an angle, it will cut better. You won't have that horrible clonking noise. But you want to have your everything lined up. Possibly one of the plates, the plate that you're feeding into the machine, so the top plate slightly further back so that it just feeds in easier, but that's personal choice. Otherwise, just line everything up and feed it through your machine. So that's the basic starting point if you're new to die cutting. If you have a very intricate die, then let me get what I would call an intricate die. So something like this, which has got lots of a bit of rogue card in there. Lots of areas that need cutting. You may find that it doesn't want to cut particularly well on the ordinary cutting plates. So what you can do is use the precision base plate, which is very hard. I don't know what this is. I think it's some sort of metal. So you've got your platform again. So this basically replaces your bottom cutting plate. So you would have this, then you would have your piece of card, then you would have your die, and then you would have your top plate, and then you would feed it through. What I would say is that it not ruins, that's wrong, it can warp your base plates If you use it too much, you need to flip your base plate to keep it flat. That's always useful to do anyway. But yeah, and you may find that having used it once on your precision base plate that you have to continue doing that, because it can just dull the cutting edges a wee bit. But if you do struggle with an intricate die, the precision base plate is an option. So that is the precision base plate. So then we go on to embossing folders. Now there are three sorts of embossing folder. Just remembered the one I forgot, and I forgot to get it out. Let me find one. There we go. So there are currently in Stampin' Up world 3 sorts of embossing folder. There is an ordinary embossing folder, which this is, so it's quite thin. It's not a very fat embossing folder, and it will emboss everything at the same level. There is then a 3D or textured impressions embossing folder. So they used to be called textured impressions embossing folders, and this is one of those. And then the replacement for those is the textured impression embossing folder. And I'm now going to go through what the differences are and the different sandwich. So if you're embossing, you don't need your thin die adapter. You just need your Big Shot platform. And if you're doing a standard embossing folder, which is, let me show you in the annual catalogue, it would be anything that is in Purple Posy. So these are standard embossing folders. For that, you need a base plate, your embossing folder with a piece of card in it, and a top plate. And that goes through your Big Shot. So the only thing you take away is the thin die adapter, because you're not die cutting, you're embossing. So that would be your standard just for these embossing folders. In the old world, there would then be the textured impression embossing folder, which is, as I say, this is one of those. It is now available as something else, but we'll come on to that. For this, you just remove one of your plates, the bottom plate. You put your card in as normal, straight would be good, and you just use one plate. Okay, so that is if it's a textured impressions embossing folder. So that would be any embossing folder that is 3D, that isn't the thin one that you bought before we launched the June catalogue last year. So if you bought this last year, this embossing folder, so before June last year, you just have the Big Shot platform and one plate. That embossing folder is now available as a 3D embossing folder. So for that, it's a slightly different platform. And the reason for that is, if I take the card out, so the ones that we manufacture now are slightly narrower. Can you see that this is a lot fatter than this? They still do the same emboss, but this is thinner. So for this, and I've marked all of my 3D embossing folders with blue, you put your card in, you use the base plate, and you have the blue embossing plate. So that is when you would use the blue embossing plate, because that is fatter than the standard cutting mat. So this is fatter. So it takes up the difference in space between this size and this size. So I hope that makes sense. So if it's a 3D embossing folder, New World, you use the blue plate. If it is old world, you use the ordinary cutting plate. So that is the standard setup. You can, and this is something I do, use a magnetic platform in place of, let me grab it, these two. So if you use this, it replaces the Big Shot platform and the thin die adapter. So you cannot use this for embossing because it's too fat, because to emboss you have to take away the thin die adapter. So you would only use this for die cutting. And again, the sandwich would be the same. It shows you here. It would be a cutting plate, your piece of card, your die, which will now hold on because it's magnetic. I hadn't realised the bottom of that was so dirty. So it will hold on. So for larger dies, it's really, really good because it does keep everything in exactly the right place. So if you want it to cut right in the corner of your card so that you've got this left, you can do that and it will hang on and it will be perfect. And then obviously you just put the other plate on top to complete your sandwich. And as I say, it's got it written on top there. So yes, for die cutting, but not for embossing. For embossing, you can only use the original Big Shot platform. One of the things that I have seen some people do, and I would not recommend it, is, and I'm going to do it purely for science as it were, is use your precision base plate on your magnetic platform, because it will hold it, but you do have the problem that getting it off, you could end up with a pinch between the base plate and the precision, so the platform and the base plate. You have that pinch issue, and if you get your finger caught between the two, believe me when I say you will know that it's happened. So this is not a good idea. If you want to use the precision base plate, use the standard Big Shot platform with the thin die adapter on it. So I hope that has helped. If you've got any more questions, please let me know. As I say, I'm only talking about the Big Shot. It is the only one that I have ever used. Before I was a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I used a Big Shot. So the only die cutting machine I have had is a Big Shot. So I cannot speak to Cuttlebugs or anything else because I don't know. But as I say, I hope you found that helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Do remember, if you need to purchase anything and you're in the UK, you can shop with me. There is a link below. And if you use the host code, you get lots of freebies. And you also, if you place an order that is at least £45, you will get a tutorial bundle at the end of that month in which you order. It's just an extra way of saying thank you. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.